Yeah. So Shankaracharya, Adi Shankaracharya also said in his prayers, Artham anartham bhavaya nityam nasti tatah sukhalesha satyam. Always remember that artha is anartha. That means money or artha is actually anartha. That means it is not good. It is unwanted. And how it is anartha, it is being explained here. Now, in these two verses, verse numbers 17, 18 and 19, in three verses, is explaining what are the problems associated with wealth. First, we have discussed that, I'm sorry, I'm repeating this again, that the misery, one gets anxiety and misery in different stages. First, he gets misery while acquiring wealth. Sadhane, arthasya sadhane, then siddhe means after acquiring. Then utkarshe means in order to increase the wealth. Utkarsha means to grow. While growing the wealth, it is miserable. Then rakshane, to protect the wealth, is miserable. Then vyaye, to spend the wealth, is also miserable. Then nasho, that means when it gets destroyed, that is also definitely miserable. Then upabhoga ayasas, yani even while enjoying, you become tired of enjoyment. So that's also miserable. So trasas chinta bhramo nanam. Then trasa means you become filled with anxiety. You become tired. Chinta means full of anxiety. Then bhrama means you become confused. So these are all the problems with wealth. And then he goes on to explain the 15 undesirable qualities that arise because of wealth. I am repeating it again. What are they? They are theft, violence, falsehood, duplicity, lust, anger, quarrel, madness, competition, enmity, faithlessness, arrogance, and attachment to women, gambling, intoxication. Therefore, it says that those who desire their own benefit, they should give up attachment to excessive wealth. That means more than what you require. And it says the mother of all anarthas. Excessive wealth is the mother of all anarthas. All the bad habits. Now, it says that even one's own family members can become your enemies because of misunderstanding due to a small amount of money. Even your own brothers or wife or parents, friends who have a very good relationship with you, but due to some financial misunderstanding, they can become your enemies. And it can even go to the point of murder. He's explaining that even in a moment, your friendship or your good relationship can turn into enmity and can even lead to the point of murder. So, yeah. So therefore, yes, these are all the problems with wealth. So then he says, Adi Avante Brahmana, he is introspecting, he is thinking within himself. Those who obtain this rare human form of life, labdva janmantara prarthyam manushyam tad dvijagriyatam. He says that the human form of life is very rare and it is desired even by the demigods. Even the demigods, they aspire to have a human life. And human life in the land of Bharatavarsha is even more fortunate. The demigods want to take birth in Bharatavarsha as humans. And even within Bharatavarsha, if you are a Brahmana, not by birth, but by qualification, if you are a Brahmana, and if you take birth in the family of Brahmanas, that is also extremely fortunate. But despite getting all this, first it is fortunate to have a human life, and to have a human life in Bharatavarsha is even more fortunate. And in Bharatavarsha, if you get a Brahmana's life, that is even more fortunate. But in spite of that, if you do not attain your self-interest, it is extremely unfortunate. They come to a most unfortunate end. So then he says, after receiving such a human form of life as a Brahmana in Bharatavarsha, which is the gateway to heaven and liberation, who would become attached to accumulation of wealth, which brings all kinds of anarthas, as we discussed just now? One who does not give his hard-earned wealth to those whom he is obliged, he says, such as the demigods, forefathers, sages, family members and living entities, he is no better than a yaksha, and he will certainly fall down from his position. That means, just as yaksha is one category of, they are like demons, they are one category of demons, you can say, like rakshasas. They are not exactly rakshasas, but they are one category of demons. What they basically do is they always guard wealth. They don't spend wealth. They simply accumulate and guard wealth. That's their only business. So those who do not give their hard-earned wealth for the demigods, forefathers, sages, family members and living entities is no better than a yaksha, and will certainly fall down from his position. Says. And then it says that to have money, youth and strength is good, but they have to be utilized for the ultimate goal of life, to attain perfection. But if money, youth and strength are squandered, I have squandered these simply for accumulating more wealth. And now he says that now I am an old man and now I can hardly do anything. So in this way I have wasted my life. So then he says that like if someone is about to die, what is the use of that wealth? Like if you know that you are going to die today, even if you win a big lottery, what are you going to do? You are just about to die. Similarly, he says, now he is thanking the Lord. He is saying that the Supreme Lord Sri Hari must have been pleased with me. The Lord must have been pleased with me, and by His mercy I got all these miseries, all this suffering, and because I got all this suffering, now I am able to realize, I got this sense of detachment and realization because of these miseries, and that is because of the mercy of God. So he was grateful to Krishna for all the miseries, and then he says that if I have some more time to live, then I will perform austerities while subsisting upon the bare minimum of food. So he decides that I will subsist on austerities with some bare minimum food, and I will execute what is in my best interest. I will meditate on God, and then Lord Krishna explains that after making up his mind in this way, he actually takes sannyas. He takes Tridandi sannyas, and he actually starts to travel and live by begging. And then he traveled to various villages, towns and many other places, and he was begging for his sustenance, and in this way he controlled his mind and senses, it says. But then the people, when they saw that he is just an old beggar, people started to criticize him, people started to insult him with many harsh words. Some uncultured people, they taunted and insulted him. How did they taunt him? Some of them, they took away his sannyas rod. You know, the sannyasis carried his danda. So someone took away the danda, and someone took his begging bowl and his asan, his deer skin asan, and some took his chanting beads, and then some took his clothes also. And after taking these things, they pretended like they were giving it back, but actually they were doing that only to take it back again. So in that way they were just making fun of him. And then it says that he had a vow of silence. He was not going to talk to anyone, but then they would try to make him speak, and when he would not speak, then they would beat him with sticks. And then others, they would say that this man is a thief, and in that way they would tie him up with a rope. And then others would insult him by saying, oh, this person is actually a hypocrite. Actually, he's not a sannyasi. He was a businessman, and he was very stingy, and his own family members rejected him. So now, just to fill his belly, since he lost all his wealth, he's simply roaming in the form of a sannyasi just to fill his belly. So he's a hypocrite. In this way, they would say, and others would insult him in other ways. They would say that, oh, this person is like a big sage. He's a great rishi. He's a great sage, like a Himalaya mountains. And see how, he's pursuing his goal with great determination, So he's actually making a mockery out of him. And then they would pass foul air on him. And they bound him up with a rope, like a pet animal, you bind up pet animals, pets. So in this way, he was bound up. So in this way, he was suffering all sorts of miseries. Adhibhautika, Adhyatmika and Adhidaivika. Miseries from his body and mind, miseries from other living entities, and also miseries from the demigods through natural disasters. And while suffering all these miseries, he was just tolerant, he never complained. He just accepted it as his destiny, as providence. So even though people tried to make him fall down from his position, they tried to agitate his mind, and they tried to make him get angry, but he remained steadfast in his determination. He never, his mind was perfectly controlled. So then he sang this beautiful song, which is called the Bhikshu Gita. He started to sing. He said, he was wondering, what is the cause of my misery? In this song, he's basically kind of trying to analyze the cause of his suffering, his condition. He is thinking, my distress and happiness is not because of these people who are doing all this to me. He is saying, it is not because of the demigods. It is not because of my own body, or the positions of the planets, or my own karma or time. Rather, it is because of my mind alone that causes happiness and distress. Then he is analyzing one by one. He is saying that it's actually the mind that is imagining what is. It is interpreting something as happiness and something as distress. So, and even the three modes of nature, goodness, passion and ignorance, they are created by the mind only. And he is analyzing one by one. Is Paramatma, the super soul, is he cause of my suffering? Then he is saying, no, Paramatma cannot be the cause of suffering, because the Paramatma is simply an observer. He is simply a witness. He cannot be the cause of suffering. He himself does not identify with the body and mind. And he is saying, okay, this is a beautiful verse here. If one's mind is perfectly controlled, what is the need of performing ritualistic activities and pious works? So in other words, he is saying the cause of suffering is uncontrolled mind. And he says, if your mind is not controlled, even if you perform austerities, or if you perform charity, or if you do religious pious activities, it's all of no use, because if your mind is not controlled, you're not going to be happy. On the other hand, if your mind is controlled, then there is, even if you don't do any of these activities, it is still okay. So in the purport, Bhaktivinoda Thakur actually explains, he quotes a beautiful verse from Narada Pancharatra. He says, Aradhito yadi haris tapasa tatah kim, naradhito yadi haris tapasa tatah kim. It means that if you worship Lord Hari, what is the use of performing austerities? You don't need to perform austerities. Because if you worship Hari, then there is no need to perform austerities. But if you don't worship Hari, then there is no use of performing austerities. There is no benefit. So similarly, if your mind is controlled, then there is no need to perform any of these religious activities. On the other hand, if your mind is not controlled, then there is no benefit even if you perform all those religious activities. So, then he is analyzing one by one. Are the demigods the cause of my suffering? No, the demigods are not cause of my suffering because they are simply avoiding the results of my own karma. And he says that even the demigods themselves are under the control of their mind. So the mind is even more powerful than the demigods. Right? Even the great mystic yogis, they are afraid of their own minds. Right? So mind is more powerful than them. And the miscreants, the people who are causing me suffering, the people who are doing all these bad activities towards me, they are also not the cause of my suffering because this is actually, my suffering is because of my contact of my senses with the sense objects. It is not because of them. And then he says, is the Atma, the soul, is it the cause of suffering? Is my soul the cause of my suffering? He says, no, the soul cannot be cause of suffering because the soul is always pure. The soul is completely beyond illusion. The soul in its original form is pure. Therefore, soul cannot be cause of suffering. Then he says, are the planets, the 9 planets according to astrology, Jyotisha Shastra, the 9 planets cause misery according to our karma. But he says, no, the 9 planets also cannot be cause of suffering because they only affect that which is born, right? So, it's the body that has taken birth. The soul has no birth. So, the 9 planets can only affect the body, they cannot affect the soul. In fact, according to astrology, expert astrologers have explained that the planets cannot cause distress to anyone. They can only cause distress to each other. That means one planet causes distress to another planet. So in that way, planets are only causing distress to each other. They cannot cause distress to us. They may affect our bodies, but they cannot cause distress to us. And then he asks, is karma the cause of my suffering? Now it gets a little deeper. Because even Bhagavad Gita tells us that yes, people suffer because of their karma, right? We read from the scriptures also that yes, karma is the cause of suffering. You do sinful activities that cause suffering, right? But here he is saying no, karma is also not the cause of suffering because karma actually gives you a situation, but actually the suffering cannot be given by karma. Because the karma can only affect the body. The karma cannot affect the soul. Right? Karma cannot give suffering to the soul. Karma can only affect your body by giving you some situation which is painful to the body. Right? So yes, therefore karma cannot be the cause of suffering actually. And he says, Kala. Now he goes even more deeper. He says, Kala. Is Kala the cause of suffering? Kala means time. In the first canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, Bhishma Dev actually addresses the Pandavas. Says that all the suffering that you have gone through, it is because of Kala. He says, like the Pandavas naturally, they were very pious. They did not perform, they did not do any sinful activities. They were not sinful. But then why they suffered so much? Like so many miseries came in their lives. So then Bhishma concludes that it is not because of karma, it is because of Kala. That means inconceivable time factor is the cause of your suffering. But here Avanti Brahmana is saying even Kala cannot be cause of suffering. Because Kala is the energy of the Lord. And Atma, the soul, is also an energy of the Lord. So one energy of the Lord cannot affect another energy of the Lord. Just like fire cannot burn fire, right? He is giving the example that fire cannot burn its own flames. Similarly, the cold weather cannot affect snow. Snow cannot be affected by cold weather, right? And similarly, flames cannot be burnt by fire. Similarly, the soul cannot be affected by Kala because both are eternal, both are energy of the Lord. So finally he concludes, then what is the cause of suffering? He says that the false ego which manifests the visible material creation is actually the cause of happiness and distress. He says it's the mind. The mind is actually, when he says mind, he means the subtle body, which consists of mind, which is influenced by the false ego. So the false ego and the mind, you can say, they are the cause of your suffering. The mind influenced by the false ego is the cause of suffering. And then he says, finally he concludes his prayers. He concludes his introspection. At the end he says, beautiful verse, Etam sa asthaya paratmanishtham adhyasitam purvatamair maharshibhi aham tarishyami durantaparam tamo mukundangri nishevayaiva. This is actually the sannyas mantra. This mantra is given when you take sannyas, then they give this mantra actually. This is a very powerful mantra, shloka. It says that just by serving the lotus feet of Mukunda, Mukundangri Nishevayaiva, by completely surrendering to and serving the lotus feet of Mukunda, I shall cross over the insurmountable ocean of nescience. Right? By being firmly fixed in the service of the lotus feet of Krishna. And he says, Adhyasitam Purvatamair Maharshivi, even great sages of the past, the previous acharyas, they have approved this path of worshipping lotus feet of Lord Krishna. So he was actually a Tridandi Vaishnava sannyasi, this Avanti Brahmana. And in this way he concludes that I shall cross this ocean of material existence by serving Lord Krishna. So in this way he concludes that the cause of suffering is the mind influenced by the false ego, and by fixing then Lord Krishna gives. And what is the solution to the mind? It is the intelligence. When you fix your intelligence at the lotus feet of Krishna, that's how you become free. Thus becoming detached after the loss of his wealth. He gave up his moroseness. He left home taking sannyas and began to travel all over the earth. And in this way, even when insulted by uncivilized fools, he remained fixed in his duty and chanted this song. So therefore Lord Krishna is concluding in the last couple of verses. It says that nothing besides your own mental concoction. It's only the mind. It is your own mental vibhrama. It says the word that is used is Atma Vibhrama. That means misconception, ignorance, misconception of the mind due to the false ego. That is the cause of all your suffering. So get rid of that. How do you get rid of that? Tasmat sarvatmana tata nigrahanam mano dhiya maya vesitaya yukta etavan yoga sangraha. He is concluding, he is saying that, my dear Uddhava, fixing your intelligence in me, you should completely control your mind, because this is the essence of yoga. He is saying that fixing your intelligence in me, so that means always remembering Krishna, always keeping your goal of attaining Krishna's lotus feet always at the prominent in your consciousness. And how do you purify your intelligence? Someone asked this question. So how do you develop such an intelligence? How do you fix your intelligence on Krishna? Yes, that's the process of Bhakti Yoga, by chanting and by hearing Krishna's message, by reading the scriptures, by hearing from pure Vaishnavas, by chanting the holy names of the Lord. What you are actually doing is, that's exactly what we are doing. You are fixing your intelligence at the lotus feet of Krishna. And last verse, Lord Krishna concludes, Ja etam bhikshuna geetam brahmanishtham samahitah dharayan shravayan shrinvan dvandvair naiva abhibhuyate. He says that this particular Gita, Bhikshu Gita, that this Brahmana has sung, anyone who accepts, one who hears or one who chants this song, will soon transcend the dualities of material happiness and distress. So we will also become unaffected by happiness and distress, just like this Avanti Brahmana. Even if we may not be able to do it like him, simply by hearing this narration or by making others hear this narration, that means by chanting this and by accepting it in our hearts, we actually, Lord Krishna is blessing us that we will also become free from, the dualities. So in this way, let us try to fix our intelligence at the lotus feet of Krishna by engaging in the sadhana bhakti of hearing and chanting the name, form, qualities and pastimes of the Lord in the footsteps of the previous acharyas. Thank you all very much. Hare Krishna.